Welcome to American Honey and this episode of Honey Bear's Kitchen. Together, we will learn to cook. Welcome back to Honey Bear's Kitchen. I'm Honey Bear and I'm excited that we get to cook together today. I had a craving over the weekend for Baked Ziti. I've never made Baked Ziti before, so this is going to be a little bit different, but I'm really hungry for it, so we're going to do it. And I found a recipe that uses two of my favorite ingredients, fresh basil and cottage cheese. If you're around my house in the summertime, we usually have a basil plant, or more like a basil bush growing on the deck. I put it in sandwiches, you can put it in salads, in spaghetti sauce. I would probably eat a salad just of basil if we didn't have lettuce. I love basil, it's fantastic. Cottage cheese, if it grew on a bush, I think we would have a cottage cheese bush too. As I mentioned, there is more going on to this recipe than we're used to. I struggled to figure out a way to organize things so you could see all of the ingredients, but I have it in sections. First, the pasta. I accidentally got penne instead of ziti. In my defense, they look the same. Any kind of tubular pasta that you could find will work. Olive oil. When you cook pasta, you use olive oil or butter. This time we're using olive oil. There's going to be a cream element where we're going to take heavy whipping cream and we're going to thicken it with cornstarch. There's going to be a cottage cheese mixture. That's cottage cheese, 2 large eggs, shredded mozzarella, and shredded Parmesan cheese. The sauce element will have ground beef, your favorite marinara sauce. Today, I'm using vodka sauce because I wanted to kick it up a notch. Diced tomatoes, fresh garlic, sugar, sea salt, black pepper, dried oregano, and my favorite, fresh basil. I wish you could smell this. The whole kitchen has this aroma of basil going on. Basil isn't in season right now, so we don't have it on the deck, but you can get these hydroponically grown fresh basil packs at the grocery store. Let's start putting it together. You know, there's a reason why these ingredients are called aromatics. The whole kitchen just smells awesome. And if it smells good now, just wait until we start cutting it up. Remember, with the garlic, we're going to use Honeybee's trick, where you cut the ends off, then you bang it with your knife, and then the peel just comes right off. We're going to chop up the garlic a little bit smaller than normal. It's not going to brown with the ground beef this time. We're going to put it in after the beef is already browned. It will cook with the sauce and with the ziti in the oven. We would release all of that awesome flavor. Oh my word, it smells good. Oh, that and the basil. It's like bruschetta for your nose. Gonna set the garlic aside, and then the basil, we don't want to eat the stem, so we'll take all of the leaves off. And when I cut it, I don't know if this is the real way to do it, but I just make it up into a ball and then just start chopping. The recipe calls for a cup of fresh basil, but in my opinion, you really can't use too much. And honestly, I don't know if that cup is before you chop it up or after you chop it up. Either way, just it's hard to overdo it on the basil. There are a lot of different steps here that you could do all separately, but two that I think are reasonable to do at the same time to save time would be browning the ground beef and starting the pasta water. You have to have the water boiling for the pasta before you put pasta in. No matter how you make pasta, that's a given. So I'm going to fill up water from the tap. I usually use hot water from the get-go out of the tap because it takes less time to bring it to a boil. So the one thing that browning ground beef and boiling pasta have in common is you have to salt early on. You salt the ground beef before it browns, and you have to salt the water when you're cooking pasta. So before it boils, before you put the pasta in, you have to sea salt the pasta water. So the ground beef is fully browned. We're just soaking up the fat that's drained off. We're going to add the garlic and the spices to the ground beef. 2 teaspoons dried oregano. 1 teaspoon salt. I'm using sea salt again because it's special. Teaspoon of black pepper, and again, I still don't have crushed black pepper, so I'm just going to crush it And I'm going to guess when there's a half teaspoon. Unless you're real sensitive to black pepper, it wouldn't hurt if it went a little bit over the top. All right, so the recipe I'm using calls for 28 ounces of tomato sauce. My cans are only 24 ounces, so I had to use a little bit from another can. I turned the heat back on. When that starts to simmer, we'll turn the heat down and just let it go for a while. You can probably hear the pasta water. It is almost ready to roll. When we cook the pasta this time, we're not going to take it all the way there. The box should have directions on how to cook it al dente. It's a little crunchy or a little bit more for soft pasta. This time we're not going to cook it all the way, a little bit less than al dente, because it's going to cook for a while in the oven in a big 9x13 with all the sauce, the cottage cheese mixture, the cream, the cheese. All right, so we're putting the pasta in. We're going to set our timer for 6 minutes, and then we'll test the pasta just to see how it's going. I almost forgot to take the lid off. You always want to boil pasta without the lid on. Stirring occasionally. I'm also going to preheat the oven to 375. Remember, we always want to put food in a hot oven. That's how things work out. I don't know if you can see through this steam, but the sauce is starting to bubble. So I'm going to just stir it, make sure it doesn't burn, and then we're going to mix up the cottage cheese mixture. We want all these herbs and the garlic to simmer for a while. So I'm going to mix up the cottage cheese element in close proximity to the noodles and the sauce so I can stir things every now and then and just make sure everybody's okay. I've got the colander in the sink, so I'm ready to drain the pasta. The eggs are going to go in the bowl first. I'm using a larger bowl than I would have to, specifically because later on we're going to mix the pasta into this bowl. I'm going to beat up the eggs. Then I'm going to add the cottage cheese. I'm going to mix the cottage cheese in with the eggs. So I'm going to pour in 1 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese and 1 cup of Parmesan cheese. We're going to mix all that together. And let me tell you, if it wasn't for the raw egg, I would take a spoon and try that right now, but we're going to hold off because of the egg. Let's check the pasta again. The noodles, I think, are there. They're not quite al dente yet. They're still pretty tough. All right, I've drained the noodles in my colander. I'm going to stir in a little olive oil that keeps the noodles from sticking together. And then we're going to set those aside. The cream element of this is really easy. It's just a cup of cold, heavy whipping cream in a soup pot. You whisk in 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. That starts to thicken it up. You don't want it to be a rolling boil, just a slow simmer, and I see it bubbling, so I'm going to turn it down. It doesn't take very long, 3 or 4 minutes will do it. Because of all the different elements that go into this, it can feel like a juggling act, and I'm just now coming back to add most of the fresh basil to the cottage cheese mixture. I'm going to save some to garnish the top of the dish. I'm going to stir that together. These are a few of my favorite things. And then I'm going to stir in the thickened cream. Once you've stirred it well, we're going to add all of the ziti. And now you see why we use such a big bowl. Then we're going to take 1 cup of the red sauce and mix that in the cottage cheese. As much as this makes me happy just to look at this mixture, it's going to be even more awesome to eat it. So we're going to dump all of that into our well-loved 9x13. I'm going to get every last drop out of the bowl. I'm going to spread that mixture out evenly, and then I'm going to add the rest of the red sauce on top. And on top of that, we're going to sprinkle an additional cup of mozzarella and a handful of Parmesan cheese. And in one last beautiful gesture, before it goes in the oven, we are going to garnish it with the rest of the fresh basil. I'm spraying the foil that I'm covering this with non-stick spray. That way the cheese won't stick to the foil. And we're going to put that in the oven at 375 for 25 minutes covered. And then we're going to take the cover off and bake it for another 25 minutes without the cover. So let me tell you what, that was a lot of work. I have sweat beating up on my brow. While a significant effort went into this, it smells awesome. So I think it will also be significantly fabulous. I'm going to wait to cut it because it has to set up in order to make nice pieces. I have to go to work now, so I will plate it up later and make sure you see a picture of it. If you're enjoying these episodes, especially this one since it was so much work, please push the like button, comment down below. If you're not already subscribed, by all means do that so you catch the next episode. I'll see you later.